For the next hour, we'll be listening to the candidates for prosecutor, incumbent Mitch Roth and Deputy Attorney General Mike Kagami. We will begin with Mr. Roth's introductory remarks. You, sir, have 2 minutes for your introduction.
Good afternoon. 4 years ago, you elected me as your prosecutor. At that time, we were looking at keeping our island safe and healthy. That's why I ran, to keep our island safe and healthy. We looked at keeping things, looking at crimes smarter, not just tougher. How have we done? In the last 4 years, we've helped reduce juvenile crime by over 50%. That was a significant thing that we looked at. We looked at it both proactively and reactively. We did things like fund our BIJAC, our Big Island Juvenile Intake and Assessment Center. We do an assessment there, kids come in, and we get them services right up front, versus bring them to HYCF. We still send kids to HYCF, and by the way, when we send them to our Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, sorry, okay. When we send them to our youth correctional facility, our recidivism rates, or the rates in which they reoffend, is about 75%. That's a 25% success rate. Our BIJAC, which we've been funding, our recidivism rates are about 6%, which is about a 94% success rate. That's pretty good. The other thing we looked at was traffic safety, especially here in Puna. Hawaii Island used to have the most dangerous roads. We've reduced traffic fatalities on our islands by over 30%. Other things we said we'd do is we'd look at crimes with a fresh set of eyes, and so we've both indicted and prosecuted successfully cold cases. There's many other successes I invite you to take a look at our website, mitchroth.org, or some of our materials in the back. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and we ask you to vote on August 13th. Thank you.
Mahalo, Mr. Roth. Mr. Kagami.
Aloha. My name is Mike Kagami. I'm currently a Deputy Attorney General in the Criminal Justice Division. I'm currently a Deputy Attorney General in the Criminal Justice Division. I prosecute crime statewide. I've been a prosecutor since 1991. I'm a little different than Mitch. I don't necessarily believe smarter, not tougher. I believe smarter and tougher. I think we need to be both smart and tough. I believe crime, violent crime in general, is still the same. I think if you look at the crime statistics ending May of this year, murders are up in Puna. It's over 300%. Also, DUI is up. Traffic fatalities in Puna is up. So I don't think these things are being reduced. Basically, I'm running because I believe the performance of the office needs to improve. And I believe I have the experience and integrity to do that. Thank you.
Mahalo, thank you. At this time, we will begin the question and answer session. I would like to remind the precinct reps to please request more time for follow-up clarification if you feel it is needed. There will be 30 seconds for a response. So, representing Precinct 1 is Betsy Robertson, who will ask the first question.
Okay. This question is for both candidates. In your viewpoint as a county prosecutor, what is the greatest, most serious law enforcement issue facing Puna residents? Okay. All right. To both candidates, in your viewpoint as a county prosecutor, what is the greatest, most serious law enforcement issue facing Puna residents? Mr. Roth, as the incumbent, would you please respond first? You have 2.5 minutes.
So I think, without doubt, one of our biggest problems on the island and in Puna is methamphetamine. And as a prosecutor, we have limits on what the legislature allows, what our judges allow. In this last legislative session, they've actually taken down some of the laws that we had. They made them a little bit more lenient on meth users. you need to realize that when people have a methamphetamine addiction, that's like a $200 a day habit. They can sell themselves, they can sell their property, they can work extra hard. And what's happening is a lot of times they're breaking into people's houses, they're stealing things, and they're doing things like that. We do not have the right treatment facilities here, and that is a big problem. It's not just about putting people in jail. You have to think about every person that we put in is going to come out and they're going to be back on our streets. We need treatment. Related to that methamphetamine problem, we also have our serious crimes. Most of the crimes that we see on this island and in Puna are somehow, in some way, connected to methamphetamine drug use, ICE. And so that is probably one of the most difficult problems because as a prosecutor, we're at the end of the line. We're getting these cases because we failed up front. In other words, we have kids who are learning about drug use, getting involved in drug use, becoming methamphetamine addicts versus catching them up front. We've been trying to work on juvenile justice, and like I said, our juvenile crimes have been down. Part of that is working with the kids, looking at treatment as well as prison. Prison is not the only suggestion. I heard what Mr. Kagami said. I said it 4 years ago. If your only tool is a hammer, all your problems are nails. We need to have a variety of solutions, not just prison. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Mr. Kagami, you have served for many years, not just as a state deputy attorney general, but on the same county prosecutor's staff with Jay Kimura, Charlene Iboshi, and Mitch Roth. So you should be well acquainted with the Big Island. What do you see as Puna's most serious legal issues?
Just to clarify, should I answer question 1 first?
No, that is
It
yours.
was to both candidates.
That is your question.
Okay, it's to both candidates, that's right. Okay.
Well,
I think Puna's biggest legal issue is related to the size and distance in Puna. I think it's such a large district that the allocation of resources to Puna, I think we need to allocate more resources. It's really difficult in terms of law enforcement to enforce laws when, it's so far apart and the response time is so great. And that's, I think, the greatest legal challenge and legal issue in Puna.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kagami.
All right, representing Precinct 2, Frankie Stapleton, you have the next question.
This goes to both candidates. Do you believe marijuana is a gateway drug? If so, what proof do you have? And what exactly does it mean to be a gateway drug? Mr. Roth?
I actually do believe that marijuana is a gateway drug, and the proof that I have is I talked to a lot of our treatment specialists, BISAC and Lukahi, as well as other places in the state that do treatment. Just about everybody I talk to says that the people who are coming in there start off with marijuana. It's the first drug that they use. Either it's marijuana or alcohol, but generally all of our meth addicts are saying that they start off with marijuana. I know it's a big statement to say all. It's probably 99%. If 99% are starting there and moving on to other drugs, that means it is a gateway, and that's the proof that I use.
Thank you, Mr. Kagami.
I view a gateway drug as one that leads to a different kind of drugs, maybe specifically methamphetamine. I don't think there's been enough research or facts that say specifically because you use marijuana, then you're going to use a different drug like methamphetamine, heroin, or cocaine. So I don't necessarily buy into the fact that it's a gateway drug. Yes, I believe it's related because you do see marijuana with other drugs, but in terms of straight gateway, I don't think there's enough facts.
Thank you.
We'll now hear We'll now hear from Carrie Kelly for precinct number 3.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us. This question is going to go, there's going to be a question for each of you, and I'm going to start out with a question to Mr. Roth. How many cases involving ice or meth has your office prosecuted in the last year for which you have statistics? And how does that compare to marijuana cases? And does your office have any particular policies regarding prosecution or deterrence of such drug-related crimes?
So, unfortunately, I don't have an exact number statistically how many cases of meth we have. I can tell you anecdotally that, we probably have. It depends on how you ask this question. Are you asking just about meth, or are you asking about burglaries, robberies, other kinds of crimes, thefts that are related to meth? Because there's a lot of cases that meth is involved in those cases. It's not necessarily that, they're a case where the police stop them and they catch them with meth. So I don't know if
Okay, so you want me to clarify a little bit then?
Yeah.
Yes, it has primarily to do with cases prosecuted or charged related drug only.
drug only.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I would say that
Like
there's-
drug houses and things like that.
I would say that easily hundreds of cases of meth. Very few, when you're looking at cases, we're looking at meth as being a felony offense. And so I would say there's hundreds of cases that come through our office a year that are meth related. Marijuana cases, if we have marijuana cases, the number of marijuana cases has significantly gone down on our island. It's not one of our key things that we're looking at. I mean, we did have the lowest law enforcement priority a couple of years ago. We looked at that. It was overruled on the state side, but still our police are not making that many cases. We're not making that many cases because there's other crimes that we're paying attention to. As far as deterrence, we have things like drug court, and we also recently opened up Veterans Treatment Court. And both of those courts look at deterrence rather than just going after people and trying to put them in prison. We know that our vets, when they go through the regular system, they have very high recidivism rates. When they go through our drug treatment courts or our veterans treatment courts, their recidivism rates are very low. Our drug court is a high-level, high-risk court, and our recidivism rates are also pretty low versus the regular things that regular recidivism in the regular system.
I'd like to make a point of clarity here.
Yeah.
So given that, is this something that comes directly from the prosecutor's office? Are these recommendations for some of the alternative treatments or alternative ways of handling this? Does the prosecutor's office handle that specifically?
So we do have prosecutors in the drug treatment courts and the veterans treatment courts that are making recommendations, but every case that we prosecute, the prosecutors are also making recommendations of what should happen.
Okay.
The law, the way it's written, is, and the way our courts are handling these cases, they're very pro-treatment, especially in the first offenses.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Kagami, kind of in relationship to this, you're working at the state level currently.
Yes.
What percentages of violent crime are linked to ice or meth and marijuana that's handled at the state level, and how would you address these issues if you became county prosecutor?
Well, there are no statistics currently being kept of the link between ice use, meth use, and violent crime. Okay, sorry. There are currently no statistics kept on use of ice or meth and its relation to violent crime. Like Mitch, anecdotally, we do see defendants convicted of violent crimes, that they do have ice or meth in their past, but there's no direct relationship in statistically. Addressing these issues if I become prosecutor, well, it depends on the violence of the crime. We look at not only that, we don't just look at whether or not there's ice or meth use. We look at the background. background of the defendant in determining what's appropriate for that person. Just because I say I believe in being smart and tough doesn't mean I'm always going to use the hammer. I'm going to use the hammer where it's appropriate. So if that person deserves to go to prison, he goes to prison. But if he deserves a chance at treatment, fine, we'll give him a chance at treatment. But if you don't follow through, you're going to prison. So that's how I'll handle it.
Okay, thank you very much.
And from precinct number 4, Roxanne Lawson, you have the
Aloha.
last question in this section, this section.
This is for both of you. Do you support decriminalization of marijuana in Hawaii? First, Mr. Kagami.
You mean the effort or future?
Do you support the decriminalization of marijuana in Hawaii, and why?
At this point, I would say I would have to look at what's out there in terms of decriminalization. I do know that I've looked at what's happened in Colorado and Washington, where marijuana has been decriminalized. And I think what they found there, you're looking at a short time period, so there's not that much statistics out there, but I think you find in those states that there's been an increase in marijuana use in the youth. You're finding increased traffic deaths from people who are high on marijuana. They're finding that ER admissions are on the rise because of people on marijuana. So those are the types of things that concern me about decriminalizing marijuana. And you know, right now, alcohol, you're free to use it, but we have a problem with alcohol and driving. Are we going to see that same problem with marijuana? Now, with alcohol, you can test it. You can breath test it. You can't do that with marijuana. So you're going to have an increase police having to go for search warrants with the judges. Is going to place an additional burden on the judiciary as well as the police. So those are the types of things that concern me about decriminalizing marijuana.
Can I ask for a point of clarification?
Sure.
I'm asking for stats regarding marijuana use and the things that you just stated. Do you have statistics to back up what you're saying?
Okay.
And in other states?
Yes, the latest study I found in Colorado. In 2014, when retail marijuana businesses began operating, there was a 32% increase in marijuana-related traffic deaths in just 1 year. Colorado marijuana-related traffic deaths increased 92% from 2010 to 2014. During that same time period, all traffic deaths only rose 8%. So you compare 92% to 8%.
Okay.
And this, with respect to youth using marijuana, in 2013, 11.16% of Colorado youth 12 to 17 were current marijuana users, compared to 7% nationally. Colorado ranked third, nationally.
Okay.
And there's additional statistics with what I said.
Thank you. Mr. Roth, do you support the decriminalization of marijuana in Hawaii? Why or why not?
So at this time, I don't. And the statistics that Mr. Gagami said are absolutely dead on from the HIDA, from actually the Colorado HIDA, which is the high-intensity drug trafficking area. In addition to that, we've been looking at other things in Colorado. Not only has emergency room admissions gone up for marijuana-related things, crime gone up, fatalities. Our fatalities in the last 4 years on our roadways have come down by over 30%. We know that a lot of the fatalities on our roadways in Hawaii County in particular, are marijuana-related. If we were to just decriminalize it right now, there would be more deaths. And you know, it's a weighing. we talk to people whose family members are killed by a drunk driver or someone who's been killed by drug. A lot of times, it's not the person that's using the drugs or the alcohol that are getting killed. It's, the other person in the roadway. In addition to that, the other things that they've shown in Colorado's homeless shelters have blown up. They just, people coming into Colorado to smoke marijuana because it's legal. Now imagine if we had the great weather that they had in Colorado, and we had the great benefits that they have in Colorado, and we added marijuana to that, we could have a homeless problem. Wait a second, we already have a homeless problem in Hawaii. That's one of our other biggest problems that we're having. So by decriminalizing it at this time, I don't think we're ready. And I agree with the statistics that Mr. Kagami brought out.
Can I ask for clarification?
Mm-hmm.
I was a victim of a drunk driver, uninsured motorist, and my insurance had to pay for me. So I'm well aware people drive when they shouldn't be driving. Right. Is it possible that people are smoking marijuana at this time, and that laws could be put on the books that you may not drive under the influence?
So it's not only possible, it's factual that people are driving under the influence. We have laws on the books. It's very difficult to test for marijuana at this time. With alcohol, you have blood tests. You can do a blood test with marijuana. We have to send our blood test to the mainland right now versus a blood test sent to Honolulu. With alcohol, you have a intoxilizer, something you blow into and it measures your blood. With marijuana, you have to send the test to the mainland. It's very expensive at this time for Hawaii to do those things. We've opted to try those cases and pay the expense because we want to make it clear that we don't want people drinking and driving or smoking and driving. And one last one real quick. Our statistics on this island are showing that marijuana is involved with a lot of our fatalities.
Thank you, Mr. Roth.
At this point, we'll rotate back to Precinct 1 with another question. Betsy?
The federal government is expected to change the status of marijuana from a Schedule I to a Schedule II drug. It can be legally prescribed by any medical doctor. How will your prosecutor's office handle that change? Mr. Kagami, if you could go first.
Well, we'll follow the law, is my basic answer. If they change it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, we treat it as a Schedule 2 drug, and we'll prosecute accordingly.
Will it, a point of clarification, will it change the sentences that would be handed down on anyone convicted of possession of marijuana?
I don't believe so, because I think under our current law, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 are both described as dangerous drugs.
Okay, thank you.
Although, we do have different statutes specifically for marijuana, so that'll also apply.
Thank you. Mr. Roth?
So, at the current time, we have medical marijuana in Hawaii.
Right.
And, we already deal with this issue about people who have medical marijuana certificates. And so will it change if the federal government changes? Not really. If the state law changes, it will change sentences and things like that. But the federal government changing, it won't have that big an effect on us. Right now, marijuana is, even though the lowest law enforcement priority was kind of overruled, it's not our biggest priority. We're not saying, oh, we got to go after the marijuana guys. It's the meth guys that we're really concerned about. And so both the police and the prosecutors, we're not seeing tons of marijuana cases as it is right now.
Thank you, Ms.
And can I just say, one of the things that a lot of people have misconceptions on this marijuana is that our prisons are filled with marijuana defendants. And I just like to challenge people on how many people do you know that are currently in our state prisons on marijuana violations, not only from our island, but from the rest of the state. There just really aren't any. It's kind of a red herring into this whole conversation.
Thank you.
And I see Tom Gagne has slipped into the Precinct 2
Yeah.
seat, so you have the next question.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Kagami, although it does say both candidates here, would you support tightening Hawaii's civil forfeiture law to require conviction of a crime before police are allowed to keep any assets seized in the investigation of a possible crime?
Can I ask for clarification? When you say keep, do you mean permanently?
Well, probably not to take home, but however the process goes, in keeping or selling the assets or whatever.
Well, currently, property that is seized pursuant to a crime is kept in custody. I believe before we can permanently keep it, I would support that they're convicted of that crime. Sure.
And is there,
Can we make a point of clarification?
it continues to say that the Hawaii County Police Department makes quite a bit of money auctioning off seized property of people never convicted of anything. What do you say to that? It's asking for Mr. Roth's opinion, but I think that we could take yours as well first.
I'm not aware of that, so I'm not really in a position to answer that.
I would agree. Mr. Roth, I guess if you could then,
Sure.
I can read it for you again. The Hawaii County Police Department makes quite a bit of money auctioning off seized property of people never convicted of anything.
So let me tell you how this whole question came about. We have asset forfeiture laws. So asset forfeiture laws allow the police to seize evidence and then civilly move to forfeit that property. Property can be forfeited in two ways. If the property is used to facilitate a crime, or if the property is proceeds of a crime. Now, we've been doing asset forfeiture for quite a while. Generally, we get convictions on these cases. However, it's a separate track. The forfeiture track is a different track than the criminal track, and the forfeiture deputy and the criminal deputy really don't communicate about what's going on. There's a Chinese wall, is what we call it, in the office, that they can't communicate with each other. So you can't use forfeiture in a plea agreement. You can't use, what's going on to cross-contaminate those two. So we use the forfeiture law. The forfeiture law does allow people to have a hearing in front of a judge and actually challenge these things. A lot of times what happens is we'll go to a car, there's drugs, nobody's claiming the bag with the drugs and the money. If you require a conviction and we can't prove whose drugs those are, why should we have to prove whose money it is as well? If the money's commingled with the drugs, that doesn't make sense. I'll say that the money that we've forfeited and seized, most of those cases are convicted, and the money goes back for a law enforcement purpose. We've interpreted that law enforcement purpose very liberally. So there's a lot of things that we've done here in Puna, specifically PAHOA, the Weed and Seed program. A lot of the programs that we had for kids, we used a lot of those forfeiture funds to do things like the wrestling clinic. What does that have to do with a law enforcement initiative? Well, if you keep kids active, keep them busy, and give them things to do, they're less likely to commit crimes. We've seen by starting a football team, by doing other things, a lot of those kids that were committing crimes out here are now active and doing great. So the forfeiture funds generally go back for a law enforcement purpose. We've interpreted that law enforcement purpose kind of liberally to allow to give back to the community, to give to programs that will help our youth succeed, because it's far easier to build a strong youth than to fix a broken adult.
Thank you. Just may I ask for a point of clarification, just for two things. One, is there a number associated with it? I'm sure it's floating from year to year, but like, is there a certain amount of money that is an actual number that you have
that we seize every year
Sure.
on this island?
Sure.
It goes up and down. If we go for a real property, someone's house, and we haven't done that very often on this island, there could be a bigger amount, but it's generally about $100,000 to $200,000, and it's not just cash, but it could be cars and other kinds of things that are used to facilitate the crimes. We also find, like when we did our Weed and Seed project here in Pahoa, it is a great law enforcement tool that has helped us reduce crime. So when they were asking about it, what we asked them to do at the legislature is say, let's do an audit. Let's check to see if there's any abuses, because we weren't hearing about abuses when they brought up the law. And so I think it's actually a bill that passed that we're going to set up a task force to look to see if there's abuses. And if there's abuses, then we fix it. Don't just say, let's fix this because we don't like it. Let's see if there's something wrong. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Carrie.
Okay, this is going to be addressed to both candidates, and you guys get to choose who goes first. Okay. Hawaii law mandates the prosecutor's offices to record and report hate crimes. FBI statistics indicate Hawaii has had no hate crimes. There are suspicions that this is done to pacify the tourist industry. Can either of you and ultimately both of you address this, please?
Well, I think Mitch will agree with me. We're not reporting hate crimes because of the tourist industry. If it applies, we do it. We charge it. I think it's pretty rare, though, that a crime is committed specifically because someone is of a particular demographic, race, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure that's accurate, but in my experience, I don't know of any hate crimes that I've charged and within my office, but definitely we don't not report it because of the tourist industry.
And I'll agree that if we see them, we mark them down. But we're blessed to live in Hawaii. We actually are kind of a melting pot where people actually get along. Does it happen? I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens where there's maybe some racial undertones that people are saying to each other. The problem is Hawaii is the only state, as I understand it, that requires the prosecutors to make this report. Other places, it's the police. You should know that not every crime comes to the prosecutor's office. A lot of times the police are dealing with things and they may hear racial overtones. Those cases may or may not come to our office. And so I think it's kind of problematic the way we have it set up here in Hawaii, that the prosecutors are the ones that are reporting it. If we see it, we always ask, have you seen any hate crimes? And they're just not overtly. I think in the last couple of years we've seen a couple, so it's not completely zero, but we don't have the problems like in Baltimore or other places where it's going on a regular basis.
Well, as a point of clarification on it, there was an article just recently, and a number of us had read it and other people had talked about it. I don't know if you guys read it or not, that FBI statistics say that there's no hate crimes in Hawaii. And there was an assumption that those hate crimes are either not getting reported, or what you've clarified right now, you've said that basically any statistics about that does not come through the prosecutor's office then. So that would be something that would come from the police level?
So what I'm saying is, I think in every other state, the police report the hate crimes.
Okay.
There are crimes that we could, add a hate crime there, but we're really not seeing the police make those crimes and send them to our office as a hate crime. If they come in as one of those crimes, sure, we'll report it. But the police out there, they look and see, okay, what's going on here? Should we charge? What should we charge? In general, they're going to charge the cases that they know we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what the prosecutor's going to do. If there's facts in those cases that we see that lead us to believe it's a hate crime, then we will report them. But we very rarely see that.
So you're saying that there's not an issue, a hate crime issue, so much in Hawaii?
There's not as much of a hate crime issue in Hawaii as there is on the mainland. However, I think it's kind of flawed the way we do it here in Hawaii, that it's the prosecutors that are reporting versus the police that are reporting.
But it was the prosecutors who determined the charge, right?
That's where I would come in. I would
Okay,
disagree
Mr.
because
Kagami, yeah,
I
please
think
may I
it's
hear your
properly
comments.
with the prosecutor's office because we determine what the crime is. Police do their investigation, but we ultimately decide whether or not it was a hate crime or not the police. Furthermore, if the police don't, if we want to learn more, we can ask them to do more. Whether or not race really was an issue, whether or not, gender was an issue, that kind of thing. So, and we speak to the victims themselves, so we can determine that. So I think the proper place is with the prosecutor's office. But I do agree, it's rare. And, we have to show that the reason the crime occurred was because this person was of a certain demographic. That's rarely the case. So I think that's why you see low hate crimes.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers, gentlemen.
Precinct 4, Roxanne Lawson. Mr. Roth, there's considerable confusion about rape kits by the public and possibly by the police. Knowing the value of physical evidence in the prosecution of violent crime and that many rapists are repeat offenders, would you please explain who's responsible for maintaining and testing rape kits, how many rape kits are in Hawaii County, where are they, what percentage are untested, and what precisely is meant by untested rape kits?
So actually a great question, and I'll tell you, I know a little bit more about this now than I did even a couple of weeks ago because we started meeting with all the prosecutors and the police from around the state just recently. So we have a task force that came out of this latest legislative session. In Hawaii County, the police collect the rape kits, and here's the procedure that they do. They send a letter to the Honolulu Chief of Police saying that we have a rape kit, we want it tested. Honolulu then says, okay, send the kit over. But Honolulu has a bunch of these kits that, are there, and so we're kind of put in a line. We are sending all of our kits over there. And so if you were to ask me this question about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have said, well, we have very few of these kits now that aren't getting tested. We used to look at rape kits and said, well, we know who it is. There's no question. There may be a confession. Why are we going to do this rape kit? And we learned that it's always better to test these rape kits because it's a defense. Well, if the prosecutors were really serious about this, they would have tested this rape kit. So now we're trying to get all of our rape kits sent over there. So I'd say it's different than it was a couple of weeks ago because the police were counting those as not untested rape kits because they're in queue, they're in line to be tested. We found out there's actually quite a few of those test kits, maybe about 100 of those kits that are waiting to be tested. And what happens is after they get tested, they're sending them over to us. We've started a sex assault grant. We've got some positions, and we're now working together with the police, and we're trying to get those cases a lot quicker and give us those numbers and what's going on even before the rape kit tests come back. So just a couple of days ago, we heard that there's maybe 100 or so for our island versus maybe 20. And those cases would have been cases where they have a suspect and everything. So there's about 100, but they're in line to be tested. We also, I see Lee Lord from my office helped write part of our grant. We have a grant for the state to start sending those tests off island, out of state to be tested. So hopefully once those funds come through, there'll be a lot less rape kits that are untested.
Okay, thank you. Can a point of clarification? Are there statistics created to track the multiple offenders which may show up by rape kit testing?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Are there statistics created to track multiple offenders which may show up by rape kit testing?
So I don't know if there's statistics that we have accumulated now, but we believe that the tests should be done regardless because it gets put into CODIS, which is the national system. And even though, in the past, like I said, we didn't test these kits because we knew who the suspect was, if that kit gets tested, that person gets put into CODIS before a conviction, and it may pop up someplace else in another state where that person, can be prosecuted elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kagami, how could rape kits in which the victim decides against pressing charges be used by police and prosecutors to determine and convict repeat sexual offenders? And would you pursue that if you become our county prosecutor?
I believe Mr. Roth answered that question. Yes, what happens is if they're tested and there's no prosecution because the victim doesn't want to go forward, the test results are put into CODIS. It's a national database. So if there's a hit in a different case, the investigating officer can do a search warrant to obtain the DNA sample for the suspect that hits in CODIS to determine whether or not it matches. So yes, and I believe both of us would pursue that.
Thank you.
This gentleman is for both. I guess if you could we'll have Mr. Roth answer first. There seems to have been a record number of police shootings in Hawaii County in the past year, leading to the deaths of many residents here, 5 since February. Could this recent spate of shootings by our police have anything to do with the militarization of our police force, as has happened across the nation? When is the use of deadly force by police justified? Does or should a prosecutor's office review procedures with the police department when such unfortunate trends occur?
So, it's kind of an interesting question. We know that several of the people involved in shootings on our island since this year have been related with a prison gang. So 2 of the people that were shot by police were both sent away to prison. We used to keep our prisoners on island. We started sending them elsewhere. They got on the mainland. They learned how to be a little bit more dangerous outside. They came back. They were involved with methamphetamine distribution. Got into situations with police where they decided they weren't going to go out easy. They're going to have to either take them out or go out. I don't think that's a police militarization issue. That's an issue where we have people that have some serious issues that are coming back and they're just dangerous people. Other things that are going on, we have people that have serious mental health issues on this island. And we used to do a better job with mental health, and we started cutting our mental health support on our island. That makes things a lot more difficult for us. As far as the police, it's like anybody else. They can use deadly force when they're faced with deadly force. And the situations that the police have been in, they've had to use deadly force for what we're seeing. There's another phenomenon that goes on. It's called suicide by cop. Again, going back to our mental health issues here on this island and the lack of resources to deal with those issues. That's really not a prosecutor problem. It gets to the prosecutor problem as far as criminality because we as a society, as a community, haven't done a good job taking care of those issues down below. As far as the reviewing, we do review with the police. Can we do better? I'll say, yeah, we could probably do a little bit better. But what I've seen so far, I think our police have been in a situation where, it's either their life or the other person's life. And I've seen some of the things that have happened on the mainland. From what I'm seeing, it doesn't look like what's happening on the mainland. When you look at our police department, I think about TMT. We saw them up on the mountain hugging these guys, and they did a great job showing aloha. And there's a lot of aloha in our police department. Do we have issues? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Mr. Kagami, I guess, Mr. Kagami, if you could address it as well. But
I agree with Mr. Roth that it has nothing to do with the militarization of our police force. Our police forces have always been armed. They follow the same procedures as always. If faced with deadly force, they're authorized to use deadly force. And I think that's what's happened in the past. I think it's just a situation where people have come out and confronted our police with deadly force, so they've had to appropriately react. And yes, I believe the prosecutor's office, the attorney general's office, we do review procedures with the police. In fact, a law was passed this last session where a committee is being formed to review these types of incidents, police shootings, and it's going to be with the attorney general's office. So we will be reviewing these types of incidents.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Roth, this is addressed to you initially, and then Mr. Kagami. Okay. It seems to have taken a long time to charge Mayor Kanoy in the matter of the misuse of his P card. Why was there such a delay, and were you aware his administration refused for more than a year to release public records?
So let me take this first, because first of all,
It's addressed to you.
Okay, it's not being prosecuted by our office. But what happened is there was a news report that came out that the mayor had spent money on his P card in a bar in Honolulu, and it seemed to be a little bit fishy. And so right after that first news announcement came on, I started talking with Doug Chin, the Attorney General for the state of Hawaii, and we agreed that there is going to be a perception of impropriety if we were to go. There's a conflict. Our office budget is decided by the cabinet, and the mayor gets to decide that. So there could be a judgment if we didn't prosecute that. We didn't do it for that reason. If we did prosecute, it was because we had an issue. So we quickly started talking to the Attorney General. The Attorney General then started asking our police department what investigation they were doing. They were not doing an investigation, so it came back to the Attorney General's office. We conflicted out of that matter. The Attorney General's office did a very in-depth investigation, and now it is being prosecuted. They recently indicted. The case is set to go to trial in October, but that is actually out of our hands in the office of the Attorney General.
So then next question will be addressed to you, Mr. Kagami, which seems more appropriate since you are in the Attorney General's office. What recourse do Hawaii County citizens have when public officials refuse to release public records? And what was the State Attorney General's office role in the investigation of the mayor's actions?
Okay, with respect to public records and access to them, that's governed by Chapter 92F of the Hawaii Revised Statutes. If you request public records through that whatever agency you want and you're not getting any action, you can file a complaint with the Office of Information Practices. They handle enforcement of Chapter 92F, and there's set procedures. They have administrative rules on how to handle that. Our role was basically we took over the investigation from the start. There's a lot of records we requested. Yes, there was some delay in indicting Mr. Kanoy, but that was just due because of the number and volume of the transactions in the year over the couple years that the P card use was involved. So our office had to go through all of those records, determine whether or not each transaction was legitimate or not, and then ultimately indict him. But it's a long process because the records are so voluminous.
Thank you, gentlemen, both of you, for clarification on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Kagami, as Deputy State Attorney General, what priority do local enforcement authorities assign to white-collar crime? Sources claim that it took pressure from the State Attorney General's office for the Hawaii County Prosecutor to file charges against Tiffany Edward Hunt for voter fraud in 2012. Is that true?
I'm not familiar. I'm aware that Tiffany Edwards Hunt was charged with some type of voter fraud, but I'm not sure of what our involvement, my office was with that. So I can't comment on that. With respect to white-collar crime, it's pretty much the same priority as any other crime. The amount of white-collar crime in Hawaii is, while the numbers are not as high, in terms of dollar amount and the effect on our economy and on the state in general is huge. I mean, we're looking at $1 million white-collar crimes committed by just maybe one person. So, in terms of numbers, it's low, but in terms of impact because of dollars and on our economy and on our state government, it's high. So we pretty much treat it just as high as any other crime, violent crime included.
Thank you. And again, Mr. Roth, we're trying to understand what the priorities are for white-collar crime. What percentage of your budget do you allocate for white-collar crime, and does that accurately reflect your priorities?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh. What percentage of your budget do you allocate for white-collar crime, and does that accurately reflect your priorities?
So, to give you the exact percentage of our budget, we have a very large budget, and you look at the deputy prosecutors. Do we have a specific deputy prosecutor that's just assigned to white-collar crime? We don't. We have a couple of deputies that will screen those cases and take those cases, and so it's just part of the regular cases. Like Mr. Kagami said, we don't have a lot of those cases, but when we do, we put people onto them.
Okay. Just to clarify, is Tiffany Edwards Hunt trial still to be scheduled on Monday?
So one of the things that happened in this case is I know Tiffany, and I've talked to her before, and so when this case came up, I had to recuse myself from that case. And it wasn't as a big a recusal as sending it to the Attorney Generals to have them look at it, but I felt that, since I knew her, I have to withdraw myself from that file. I turned that over to Dale Ross, my first deputy, and other deputies in the office. And so I can't even tell you because they don't, I'm not involved in that.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It looks like we have just one additional question, so let's just go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you. What percentage of Hawaii's incarcerated citizens are housed in private prisons? Are these all on the mainland? What do you think would be a better alternative to the use of private mainland for-profit prisons? Mr. Tagami?
I believe most, if not all, of Hawaii's inmates that are not in Hawaii are in private prisons, specifically one in Arizona, I think. I do believe there's maybe one or two in other prisons. As far as better alternative, I'm not really in a position to answer that because, that's in terms of state budget. I mean, where we're going to put it, that type of thing, and that's really not something I'm familiar with or would be involved with in terms of being prosecuting attorney.
Okay. Mr. Roth, you mentioned some of the problems inmates learn worse crimes in the mainland. So can you address the same question? Would you like me to ask again, or
Sure. At any one time, Hawaii has about 6,000 people from the state that are incarcerated. We send a lot of those people off to the mainland. We don't send all of them. We have prisons here on this island. We have Halava on Oahu. We have Cashbox on Maui. So we do have some prisoners here. We used to just send them off to different places and they'd move around. The private prisons in Arizona right now, my understanding is that they keep all of our Hawaii inmates together. So that's a better alternative than sending them to other places to become better criminals. Does that mean that they don't become better criminals on the mainland than over here? I don't know. I know that it costs about $68 a day per prisoner on the mainland versus about $120 a day in Hawaii. There's some other costs, though, you have to understand. Generally, if a prisoner's family is separated from them, we know that we're going to have a lot of kids who are going to be affected. Kids who come from homes of incarcerated parents stand a significantly higher percentage of becoming involved with the criminal justice system than kids, whose parents aren't incarcerated. Think about it, kind of makes sense. When they're on an island close by, they can have better relations if they take that up. So there's a whole bunch of balancing tests that we have to look at here. I think if we had the funds, it would be better to have them here, because we know when these people come out, they're less likely to be dangerous than when they go other places and they're indoctrinated into being better criminals other places. So, there's a balancing test.
Oh, a point of clarification.
Yeah.
For-profit prisons.
Like I said, to me, it really doesn't matter if it's a for-profit or a government prison. I think you have the same statistics. The for-profits are a little bit cheaper than what we pay in Hawaii, but there's another set of costs that we have to understand is there that kind of goes beyond what we do as prosecutors. I can tell you this: every time we put someone in, they're kicking someone out. And the legislators, I'm telling you, they have 6,000. The legislators want to bring that number down as low as possible, which makes the job of a prosecuting attorney a lot more difficult if you just want to lock people up. You have to have different consequences. Not every person's going to be the same. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please bear with me.
Okay.
Kulani Prison
Yes.
is not being well used. Can we send more prisoners there instead of the mainland?
I believe Kalani Prison is someplace that you can send people to, and it could be something that benefits Hawaii, but you have to realize by doing that, you're going to pay more. And, as taxpayers, that means we're all paying more.
The money isn't always the bottom line in return.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, sorry.
I believe that safety is paramount to, the money, but money does come into consideration because it's about twice as much.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you to all our precinct representatives. I appreciate the time you put in to formulate your questions, and we thank you very much. We'll now give each candidate 60 seconds for a final statement. Mr. Kagami, since you went second on the introductions, you can go first for your final statement.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you folks. I'll hang around afterwards if you guys have any specific questions. But other than that, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Roth.
Thank you for coming out and being part of this today. It's really important as voters to know what people stand for, what they're about. We feel really good about the successes that we've had in the last 4 years with the prosecutor's office. We want to continue those successes, especially in areas of cold cases, juvenile justice, sex assault. We've had some real challenges. We've got a sex assault grant. We're looking at sex assault a lot differently. We're looking at domestic violence and other issues. I invite you to come take a look at my webpage, mitchroth.org, or take some of the materials. Most importantly, August 13 is the date that this race is over. So please vote. Thank you very much.